If you've ever felt your stomach drop when you see an official-looking message, one that screams court, police, fine, urgent, then you already understand the kind of fear this story is built on. Because the scariest scams don't look like scams. They look like your life is about to be ruined by something you didn't even know you did. A stamp, a case number,
A signature.
a deadline that feels like a trap. And the worst part? It doesn't ask for much. Not at first. Just one payment to close the issue. Just one transfer to avoid escalation. Just one decision made in panic before you have time to think. This is the story of how I got an order from the court that looked flawless, so flawless it made my hands shake, and how an invisible machine, wearing the mask of authority, pushed me step by step until I paid. It began on an ordinary morning, one of those mornings when your mind is already overloaded and your attention is split into 10 small pieces. The kind of day where you answer emails without reading them twice, where you scroll past warnings because you've seen too many false alarms to believe any of them are real. I was in that exact mood when my phone buzzed. Not a call, not a text from a friend, a notification, a formal-looking email alert with a subject line that didn't belong in my inbox at all. Court notice, ruling issued, immediate compliance required. For a second, I stared at it like it was a mistake meant for someone else. My brain tried to reject it the way you reject bad news when it doesn't fit your life. A court ruling? Immediate compliance? That language belonged to other people. People who lived inside crime shows, people who had complicated problems, people who knew what compliance even meant. I clicked before I could talk myself out of it. The email opened with a heavy block of text. Not messy, not suspicious. It was written in a tone that felt cold, official, and practiced. The kind of voice that doesn't ask, informs. It referenced article numbers, procedural codes, and a case file identifier that looked like something that could exist in a real system. There were phrases like, failure to comply within the stated time frame, enforcement measures, transfer of materials to the executive service, additional penalties and restrictions. There was a PDF attached. And the moment I saw that attachment, my pulse moved upward in a way that didn't feel like anxiety anymore. It felt like my body had detected a threat and decided to run, except there was nowhere to run. I opened the PDF. It loaded instantly, crisp and clean like it had been generated inside a government office. The top had a crest. Under it, the name of a court and a judge, written with that careful spacing official documents used to look important. On the right corner, a stamp, blue, semi-transparent, angled in a way that looked naturally applied. At the bottom, a signature line that looked like ink. And it was addressed to me. My full name, spelled correctly. My address. Not just the city, the street. The document claimed I had been issued a ruling for failure to comply with a legal obligation relating to an administrative case. It mentioned a violation, non-payment of a prior fine or non-compliance with a notice, something like that. And then came the part that cracked my composure clean in half. Payment must be completed within 24 hours to avoid escalation, enforcement actions, account restrictions, and referral for further proceedings. 24 hours. Not within a week. Not within 10 days. 24 hours. That number did something to my brain. It made everything feel immediate, physical, like a fire alarm. I read it again and then again, searching for the place where it would reveal itself as fake. A typo, a wrong logo, a broken formatting error. Something. Nothing. It looked too perfect. I zoomed in on the stamp. Even the stamp had texture. Tiny imperfections. The kind that makes your mind go, yes, this is real. It's real because it's not perfectly perfect. A lie that understood psychology better than I did. My mouth went dry. I wasn't someone who had trouble with the law. I wasn't reckless. I didn't have unpaid debts hidden in drawers. But the document didn't care about who I was. It carried the weight of the system, and the system didn't need to explain itself. That was the first trigger, authority without explanation. The second trigger arrived right after.
My phone rang.
A number I didn't recognize. No name. No location. Just digits. I hesitated. The PDF was still open on my screen. My finger hovered, and in that tiny delay, I imagined what would happen if I didn't answer. Another call, another notice, someone showing up at the door. The quiet logic of fear. If you ignore it, it gets worse. I answered. A voice greeted me, calm, professional, and sharp enough to cut through my thoughts. Not aggressive, not emotional. That's what made it scarier. They identified themselves as a representative, something like a legal officer, a court clerk, or an authorized specialist. The title sounded official without being easy to verify. They referenced the case number, the same case number on the document. They didn't ask if I received the notice. They spoke as if it was already confirmed, as if the system had logged everything. Then they said the sentence that shifted my fear into panic. This is your final notification before enforcement measures begin. I asked what it was about, my voice smaller than I wanted. They did not explain in a human way. They explained in a procedural way. They listed consequences: account blocking, referral, executive service, restrictions, additional penalties. Words that were vague enough to scare me and specific enough to feel real. They also did something else, something subtle and cruel. They implied that my chance to fix it quietly was closing. If the payment is not completed today, the case will proceed to the next stage automatically. After that, we cannot stop it. That was the third trigger, the closing window. The fourth came next. They told me not to waste time calling random numbers or trying to argue, because the ruling was already issued. They said if I wanted to resolve it, the only option now was to pay to close the matter. They offered to guide me through the process. And then, like they were doing me a favor, they lowered their voice slightly, in a tone that suggested private help within a rigid system. You can close it today and avoid additional complications. I felt my chest tighten. My thoughts started to race in the chaotic loop panic creates. What did I miss? Did something happen? Could someone have used my identity? Is it a mistake? But if it's real, and I ignore it. They kept speaking with the confidence of someone who had all the power. They asked for no passwords, no bank logins.
No había scam hooks.
They didn't say, send money to this random wallet. They said the payment could be made through an official partner payment gateway, and they would send the details. And then came the fifth trigger. They knew my data. They repeated my address casually, as if reading it from a screen. My full name again. It landed like a hand on my shoulder. Fear changed shape in my body. It was no longer disbelief. It was compliance. A primitive urge to make the threat stop. They ended the call after reminding me again. 24 hours. After that, we cannot stop enforcement measures. When the call ended, the silence in my room felt heavier than noise. I stared at the PDF again, and it stared back unblinking. I tried to think logically. Real courts don't demand payment in 24 hours, I told myself. But then another thought struck. Maybe they do. Maybe it's new. Maybe it depends on the case. Maybe the system changed. Maybe I just never experienced it before. That is what fear does. It doesn't just scare you. It makes you doubt your own knowledge, because your knowledge is calm and fear is loud. I opened the PDF properties. The file name looked official. The metadata looked normal. I searched the judge's name. Someone with that name existed online. I searched the court. It existed. Everything I checked gave me enough yes to drown out my maybe. Then another message arrived. A second email, same sender format, same official tone. Reminder, compliance deadline approaching. They were tightening the rope. I felt like a small animal being cornered by paperwork. And then, just when my mind tried to slow down, a new element entered the story. A message with a link. It arrived through email and then again through SMS, as if the system was designed to be unavoidable. The message said, payment gateway, case closure fee. Use reference number exactly as stated. The link looked official. Not perfect, but close enough. A long domain with government-sounding words, subdomains, and secure-looking formatting. I didn't click immediately. I stared at it for a long time, and in that stare, I felt the battle between my instinct and my logic. Logic whispered, slow down.
Verify.
Ask someone. Find the court's official website. Call a public number. Instinct shouted, Do it now.
Close it.
Make it stop. That's when I noticed another detail in the PDF. A line that said something like, "This ruling is effective immediately. No appeal is possible after the compliance deadline." Appeal. That word was a weapon. It implied a legal reality that I didn't understand. And because I didn't understand it, I feared it. I thought of my bank accounts, my cards, my ability to pay rent, buy food, function. The possibility of restrictions landed like a nightmare. Because the threat wasn't just punishment. It was disruption. It was the system reaching into your life and freezing it. And even if you're innocent, disruption can ruin you. So I clicked the link. A payment page loaded. Again, clean. Minimalistic. It asked for a reference number, my name, and then showed the amount. The amount wasn't enormous. That was intentional. It was big enough to hurt but small enough to justify as closing the issue. It also had the perfect psychological shape. A fee that feels cheaper than the consequences. Under the amount, there was a timer-like message. Payment must be completed within 2 hours to confirm closure before system escalation. 2 hours. Now the 24-hour deadline became a 2-hour deadline. That's how they do it. They compress time until you can't breathe. My hands trembled slightly as I typed the reference number from the PDF. The page recognized it and displayed the case details. Not full details, just enough to convince me it was connected. I started to enter payment info. Then I stopped. A wave of suspicion rose like a last defense. I backed out and opened a browser search for the court's official website. I found what looked like it. I found a phone number. But then another thought hit me. What if I call and it makes it worse? What if it alerts them? What if the officer on the phone says I missed the deadline? What if I get flagged? It sounds irrational, but fear doesn't care. When you're terrified, you start believing the system is a trap and you must move carefully inside it. I opened the number anyway. My finger hovered over call. Then my phone buzzed. Another incoming call from the unknown number. Like they could feel me slipping away. I answered, and the same calm voice returned, now slightly firmer. They said the system showed I had accessed the payment gateway, but not completed the process. That sentence froze me, because it meant they were watching, or pretending to watch. Either way, it worked. They told me they could hold the case in a pending status for a short time, but only if I completed payment within the next hour. They spoke like a manager at a disaster, like someone managing a process, not like someone scamming. Then came a new pressure. If you do not complete it, it will be marked as refusal to comply. Refusal. That word painted me as guilty. I tried to ask what the original fine was for. They responded with technical language about administrative procedures and said I could request a full statement only after compliance. That made no sense, but it sounded like bureaucracy,